Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Stephen G. Foster about full-throttle leadership and building a strong leadership culture in your organization. Stephen Foster, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Good to be with you, John. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. I'm super excited to have a conversation. And today we're going to be focusing on building a strong leadership culture within your organization and this idea that you espouse, full throttle leadership. I'm super excited to explore that with you. As we get started, I just wanted to share Stephen's bio with everybody. Stephen Foster is managing partner of Foster plus Fathom, a leadership and goodness development group in Dallas, Texas, an award-winning speaker, author, facilitator, and event MC. Stephen also is a nationally recognized advocate for giving back to the communities where we live, work, and meet, collaborating with a host of organizations and individuals to become force multipliers for the greater good. His roadmap for success is simple and straightforward. Outlook determines outcomes, so go full throttle. That's not surprising considering he also is a Harley-Davidson life member who in 2013 completed a 34-day, 34-state, 13,000-mile solo motorcycle ride along the perimeter of the U.S. to raise awareness and support for veterans and military families, a journey chronicled in a new book, Full Throttle Leadership: Passion, Power, and Purpose on the Edge of America, just released this past summer. Thank you, Stephen. It's been a pleasure introducing you. Anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background before we really dive on in?
No, you covered it all. I may take you on the road with me and have you do all my introductions. And again, thank you for the opportunity. We purposefully call our concepts full throttle leadership because it's a bit of a tongue twister. So you did really, really well.
Yeah, and it did twist my tongue a little bit, didn't it? Well, very good. So let's start there. Let's start with what you mean by full throttle leadership. Define that for us a little bit, maybe provide an example or two, and then we can talk more generally about how we can adapt that or pull that in rather to our discussion about developing and building strong leadership cultures within organizations.
Sure. Well, you mentioned in my introduction that I also am a Harley-Davidson life member. And so I can tell you, absolutely that the best organizations, most, if not all, of the organizations who are lauded as having a great culture, a leadership culture, and always appear in the Forbes list of the top 100 places to work for, have a culture of service to everyone on the left and the right. It's almost a military concept of service before self. And so as we work with organizations, I make the connection between service in your culture, in your organizational culture, with running like a motorcycle club. I've been riding motorcycles for 50 years, and I can tell you that when you hit the road with a group of people headed out for a destination, maybe defined, but journey not really sure what's ahead of you, you only get there if you take care of the people who ride in the pod with you. And so that means passion for the ride, knowing where you're going, who's coming with you, how you plan to get there, and most importantly, why that journey is important to everyone who's going to contribute their time, talent, and treasure to the ride. The power of that ride, which is literally skill building, understanding that not everybody has the same experience, not everybody has the same abilities, but you only get there if you start together and finish together, and that everyone feels like they contributed. And the final piece, the most important piece, is the purposeful, meaningful culture. Why are we doing this? What does that mean above and beyond the bottom line, which is important in any organization? But if you want to engage new customers in your ride, if you want to really generate true, meaningful, lasting, sustainable employee satisfaction, then it's got to be more than the bottom line. Everybody has to understand we contributed something that floated all the boats. So that, in kind of a nutshell, is what is the concept behind full throttle leadership. It's not a new concept, but it's one that constantly needs to be examined and tuned up if you expect to have a powerful leadership culture.
Yeah, I really like those principles you just laid out, and clearly, we need to be all in being effective leaders. It's not a passive thing. It's not something that can just be an afterthought. And when I first saw the term full throttle leadership, that was the first thing that came to my mind. That this really needs to be at the core of who we are in our role, whatever it is within the organization. We can be the lowest kind of line level supervisor with only a few people reporting to us, all the way up through CEO, board of directors, whatever. And wherever along the hierarchy we're talking about. But even if we're in informal leadership roles, it doesn't even have to be a formal hierarchical leadership role. Ultimately, we need to take very seriously the role that we have and the impact that we can have on those around us, and we need to be invested in it. And when we're invested in it, then that's when we're going to have a chance to really make a strong impact. And that's really what's going to then lead into developing this stronger culture that we're going to explore together. Like how do we go about doing that? Before we get into how to build that culture, let's talk a little bit first about some of the roadblocks, the hurdles and challenges that we face regularly within organizations. Because all this sounds great, and I think most people listening are like, yeah, this is wonderful. We all want this. But in theory, it's one thing. In reality and practicality, you're in the workplace every day, and we end up getting pulled in 1,000 different directions. And how do we really give the time to this? So what are some of those challenges that you see that organizations regularly are trying to battle and deal with while they simultaneously want to create a dynamic culture, but they also they're just trying to get the product and service out to customers, right? And keep the organization running.
Well, that's really, you've landed on the sweet spot here. Is every organization, it doesn't matter what widget you're making, what product you're putting out there and you're selling, you've got to do what you do every day. You've got to sort of keep the wheel turning, right? So one of the things that when we work with organizations, once we define what it is they do and how they do it, we always land on a couple of things that keep them from getting to this leadership empowerment where everyone feels like I'm a contributor. I don't have to ride at the head of the pod all the time. I just need to be a member of the pod and be willing to rotate up. And I'll give you a graphic and then we'll answer your question. So whether you ride motorcycles or not, you've been in your car, you've been going down the road and you've seen a pod of motorcycles come by you that, and it's pretty impressive. They make a big noise, but if you pay attention, you'll see a couple things. One, they always ride in what is called the staggered formation, and most people know it as the flying V. So, it's a lead bike and one behind and one behind. And they do that purposefully. One is it creates more momentum as everyone moves together. You sort of drag a little bit and you move on the momentum of the bike in front of you. But more importantly, no leader can ever stay out in front of the ride 24/7. And the reason that you can't is that's where all the main resistance is. That's where all the roadkill is. That's where all the obstacles that pop up in the road. So you've got to be able to rotate back. So one of the things that we tell organizations is every member of this team, your team, the team, is a leader. And you have to find purposeful impactful moments where they can rotate up and contribute. And that's called leadership development. And I will tell you that the companies and the organizations that I work with, they're very purposeful about making sure that whether it's the senior VP of whatever or the newest member of the team, that they have opportunities to contribute. Now that can happen in a staff meeting, and I'm not talking about the typical soul-sucking, time-wasting staff meeting. I'm talking about, here's our issue, here's what we need to do, here's what we're challenged with today, here's where we want to grow capability and skill today, and now let's have a discussion, let's have your ideas, because I will also tell you that the biggest roadblock to developing a full throttle leadership team is a me-focused leadership hierarchy. That traditional corporate, hierarchy pyramid. Nobody wants to go on a motorcycle ride that has been completely planned out with every stop scheduled and every lunch planned. They want to feel part of the decision making. So the first part is to sit down and say, okay, here's our challenge today. Open the discussion. What does the team think? Leadership is we focused, not me focused. And in fact, if we have a sign hanging in our conference room and it says, if you think you're the smartest person in this room, you're in the wrong room. There are no titles in our own organization. Everyone meets sort of at a peer level. And yes, there are responsibilities that have a hierarchy to them. But at the end of the day, I don't get done what I need to get done just because Stephen Foster is brilliant. Quite the opposite. I get done what I need to get done because I have a team that I completely trust, and they know that I completely trust them, and they're empowered to make decisions. And that's the first step, is letting everybody know you already have a seat at the table. You already have your hand on the throttle. Roll on it. There's no bad ideas. There's no stupid questions. In fact, it's all about figuring out as we move along and then turning that process, that takeaway, into sustainable, repeatable culture. And we do it over and over and over again. And pick the company that you love, whether it's Starbucks or it's Southwest Airlines or it's a Google or it's whatever it is. You'll find that that's the reason that you love them, is that they give you what you need, they bring you into their culture, and you trust them. That's leadership.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the focus on trust development, empowerment, inclusion, allowing everyone to be part of the conversation. All of those elements, I think, are really, really important, and they fit really well with this the analogy, the figurative example of the bike ride and the flying V, as you mentioned. You've also referred to it. You talk about goodness. What's the role of goodness? Perhaps it's somewhat connected to what you were discussing earlier about the kind of servant leadership mentality. But what's the importance of goodness, and why is it important in building a strong leadership culture?
I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations.
personally, I don't believe that you can call yourself a leader if you just serve yourself. And there are many historical examples of that. And we have certainly seen examples of that in failed corporate America. We see it in our politics, quite frankly. And so goodness is all, again, it's about the we. It's about you're doing this not for yourself, not to add medals to your chest, not to add kudos for yourself. A leader wants to build sustainable culture. He or she wants it to survive them. That's why Apple is still here and Steve Jobs is not, because, he built this culture that said, this is who we are. This is what we do. Everyone has a place, and I don't have to be here physically or otherwise to make sure that people get who we're all about. And so I think doing good, and I call it goodness, is important. And especially post-COVID, and I want to just land here for a second. There was so much disruption and disconnect and despair across the planet because of COVID. But what you saw in organizations that had to lay off employees, and the ones who were able to stay and survived, was they did have this culture of care, of goodness, of let's take care of each other, because we're not selling our product right now. We're not getting together. We're not gathering in the office. We've had to lose some members of our family, of our tribe, of our team. So how do we take care of each other? And back in the day when I first started talking about goodness, and I would go into corporate America and they would give me the eyes would kind of glaze over, because it was like, well, but you can't put a metric to that, Stephen. And how do I measure that to my bottom line? And how do I sell that to my board of directors? Well, we're in a different era now. In fact, the last 4 issues of Fortune magazine talked about goodness as a culture, as a business metric for however you want to measure it: bottom line profits, employee engagement, customer satisfaction, customers willing to change brand loyalty to a new brand because their culture of being a good, what I call a force multiplier in the community where you live, work, and meet, that resonated with them. And this new generation of millennials and Gen X's and Y's and Z's and whatever letter follows it, that's their sweet spot. They want to work for a company that is a good corporate citizen. They want to work for a place that understands that for them, part of me giving you my time, talent, and treasure is completely dependent on my trust that you are doing things ethically, correctly, that you're doing good in the community. So I no longer see the glazed over look, because I think the last poll I saw on Fortune, 83% of corporate CEOs understand the value of being good corporate citizens, giving back in the communities where you live, where you work, and where you meet. And your first customer is not that external one. It's those internal, it's those family members. It's that team that is your brand.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think over the course of the last 18 plus months, we've really seen a sifting, so to speak, of the caring and the caring leader with empathy, who can stand up and be there for their people, the organizations that have been able to do that and those that haven't. And there's been lots of talk around the Great Resignation, and certainly the labor market right now is a challenging one for organizations to attract and retain good people. And people just aren't willing to put up with kind of the status quo, the old school approach to what they were experiencing in their organizations. They expect more, they're demanding more, they have options. And so we need to care more. We need to be good to our people, treat them like individuals, like human beings, treat them with dignity and respect. And I mean, that's all sounds, I suppose it sounds obvious, but in the daily grind of doing business, those types of things can get left by the wayside very easily if we're not really giving it a focus. And you know, the survey you just cited about executives and CEOs who recognize the importance of the organization as a corporate, a socially responsible corporate partner in the communities. That's good to hear, and that certainly has shifted a lot in recent years and over the last decade. Yet, saying it is one thing, doing it is another. And being able to be effective in really putting that into practice in our organizations where the rubber meets the road, that's what we need to focus more on. Because I really do think that the needle has moved, that we have more corporate leaders that recognize and understand the importance of this, even if not for the human case, but for the bottom line business case of the organization. They recognize it's important. Yet, a lot of organizations still haven't quite figured out how to do it. And it's because we have so many, just really tall pyramid structure hierarchies within organizations. And the traditional organization it was built more for efficiencies, not necessarily for, what we're talking about right now. So how do we, if I'm a leader sitting here listening to this conversation and I'm like, this all sounds great, I want to do this within my organization, I want to be a leader that uses goodness in my interactions with my people, yet the system they're in, the structure of the organization is such that they feel they feel hindered in their ability to do so. So what would be some of those first steps that we need to start to take as we're challenging the systems that we're in, as we're trying to create more positive, sustainable, healthy organizational policies, practices, and procedures to make sure that we are taking care of our people?
Well, nothing that is not culture ever sticks. A process will change and morph based on a lot of things: external pressures, speed to market, marketing, availability of products. So you have to commit that doing good is part of the doors being opened every day. And if you think about it, most organizations know how to do this, but they do what I call one-offs and drop-offs. I don't think that there's probably a company on the planet that doesn't do a Toys for Tots drive at Christmas, who doesn't collect coats for the homeless, or doesn't have a food drive where they say, bring in some canned product. And I always laugh at that one, because if you've ever been a part of that and you look at what is brought in, it's like, yeah, that's the can of, asparagus that nobody wants to eat, or the kidney beans. So, there is no heart connection there. So one of the best place to start is, I also know for a fact that I don't care how big your company is, if you have 4 people in it, if you have 4,000 people in it, there's someone in that organization that giving back is a core competency. It's part of who they are. And so I love to get teams together and say, okay, do you have a cause that is part of your culture? Some do, they adopt an inner city school, or they work with the local children's hospital or the Veterans Association. That's great. So instead of doing this one-off and this drop-off, once a quarter, do a goodness project, have everyone involved. And I can tell you, there's a couple of companies that do this really, really well. I just had the chance to work with one in Dallas last year, and 4 times a year, the employees have one day, paid day off, but they have to use the day doing good in the community. And so they work together as collaborative work groups by department. They don't all have to have the same cause, but they have to come up with a campaign, something, an activity, an event that they do. After they individually finish that, the week after, they come together and they present what they did. And the company chooses one event, one cause that they think was really meaningful, really expressed who they are. And whatever funds were raised, they match them for that cause. Now, here's what happened: 4 days, 4 paid days throughout the year. They expanded their reach in the community. They were able to leverage their social media, or whatever their communication strategies were. In many of cases, they were local newspapers, local television crews coming out and filming. So their messaging was, Company X is a good corporate partner. Here's what they did in the community. Here's how their employees reached across the landscape and changed fundamentally the lives of people in those communities who have no connection to their company, and talk to their employees, see how motivated they were to return to the work the next day and jump back in it and own and have that ownership, that what Jocko Willink, the retired Navy SEAL, calls extreme ownership of this goodness that they did. And again, any metric that increased the bottom line, that increased brand awareness, that increased employee satisfaction. And I'll guarantee you those companies got brand new customer inquiries because they saw it on social media, they saw it, they read about it in their newspaper, they saw it on the 6 o'clock news and in the human interest feature, and they went, wow, that's a company I'd like to work for. That's a company that I want to find out more about. So you have to make it part of your culture. And that doesn't have to land on the CEO. In fact, it's best that it doesn't land on the CEO. Ask the boots on the ground. Ask your people, what do you care about? What are you doing? How are we going to fill these 4 slots? And what makes the most sense? And even employees who maybe don't come to that ride, in parentheses, with a goodness culture, it's not part of what they did growing up, their eyes sort of light up and they go, wow, this is, I like what I do. And I think this is a great company, but we're really making a difference. I'm part of something that's changing people's lives. And by the way, it's changing my life. It's making me more grateful. It's making me more thankful and aware of the blessings that I have in my own life, that we all really have. Because I promise you, I don't care where you are right now, somebody isn't doing as well as you are. Somebody doesn't have the resources that you do. And if you're able to connect with that and see that impact you make, I mean, there's nothing better than that. That's leadership. That's legacy. That is full throttle.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Stephen. It has just been a pleasure talking with you. We could go on and on, but before we close for today, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Sure. Well, the easiest way, obviously, is to go to our website, www.foster and then -fathom.com. But you can also find us at Facebook at Foster Fathom and LinkedIn at Foster Fathom as well. Just Google it; it'll pop up. We have a pretty strong presence in social media, just because every day we have the opportunity to partner with so many great organizations. And I would say to your teams that are out there, you don't have to ride a motorcycle to be a full throttle leader. You don't have to have any formal leadership training. What you have to have is a passion to do good, to learn, to grow. That's actually what the name of our company means. Foster means to grow and Fathom means to know. So if you've got a passion to grow and know your own self personally and professionally, if your organization has a commitment to grow and know their impact in the communities where you live, you work, and you meet, then you're already on your own journey. You're already on your own ride to full throttle leadership. And I encourage everybody to embrace that, because we need that now in our lives, personally and professionally, more than ever. And it will make a difference. And there's nothing better than that.
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Stephen and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.
The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The Alchemy of Truly Remarkable Leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.